Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Healing Kiss by Amanda Uhl, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Lillian Milano clutched her younger sister's clammy hand between her palms. Hannah was only 22, too young to die. Lillian fought the panic pushing into her lungs, pressing on her chest like a weighted blanket. She dropped her head on the hospital bed rail. Deep breaths. Keep calm. Not the time to hyperventilate, not the time to feel faint, not the time for strong emotion. Strong emotion only weakened her healing ability, and without her life-saving gift, Hannah wouldn't survive the night. Did anyone see you? Her dad sat on the opposite side of the bed, his glasses crooked and his hair going every which way, looking like he hadn't slept in days. God, how she'd missed him. The past 2 years had been the loneliness of her life. I don't know. I don't think so. You're taking a big risk coming to Cleveland. You should have stayed in Boston where you'd be safe. His nostrils flared, but Lillian knew he wasn't angry. He held back tears. I've already lost your mother, and now Hannah has this virus. I can't bear to lose either one of you girls. You're not going to, I promise. The healing has to work. It will. Hannah's going to beat this. Lillian moved her chair until her knees touched the bed and squeezed Hannah's hand. Come on, sis. Stay with me now. You don't have to do anything. Just rest. Hannah didn't stir. The steady drip, drip of the IV, the beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor, and her sister's raspy breaths were the only sounds interrupting the tense silence. She looks so weak, too weak. Oh, God, I hope I'm not too late. Lillian closed her eyes, focusing on Hannah. A dark shape formed behind her eyelids. Hannah's shape. Soft orange light wrapped around her sister's body like a warm shawl. Deep breath in. The orange light pulsed and glowed. Deep breath out, careful not to disturb the orange light. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Again. 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 Each of Lillian's breaths radiated healing light and power, energy she absorbed from others as easily as a tree absorbs sunlight. In the case of minor illness, the energy she released would have been enough to heal and comfort a patient. But this was no minor illness, and Hannah was no ordinary patient. Orange light faded into the dark shape as Hannah's body absorbed the healing energy. Lillian opened her eyes to see Hannah's flutter, then open. Her gaze looked unfocused and feverish. She squeezed Hannah's hand and released it. If she held it longer, the heat and light would transfer back to her, negating any positive effect on Hannah. Breathe. Calm. She stood and swiped a trembling hand across her damp forehead. Healing even a minor sickness sapped her strength. Tackling a severe illness like Hannah's could kill Lillian if she wasn't careful. Did that help her, Lulu? She met her dad's gaze across the bed. The pet name almost had her falling apart. When had she last heard him say it? And in that scratchy timbre. She curled her toes to keep from crying. Yes, she said, projecting a confidence she didn't feel and pulling air into her starved lungs. But it's not enough. She turned toward Hannah. It's going to be all right, sis, I promise. I'll keep trying until you're better. You've got to hang in there. Her sister nodded and coughed. Fear filled her coppery brown eyes. The hand that Lillian had clasped never moved. Not good. Her sister's normally lustrous, dark hair lay thin and limp, plastered against her sweat-slicked forehead. Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. The flu-like symptoms can be fatal. Fatal. The word rattled around in Lillian's head. As a nurse, she understood the seriousness of the virus Hannah had contracted. But as her older sister, the knowledge ripped through her mind with the stunning force of a tornado. Breathe. Excuse me? Lillian jerked her head toward the door at the masculine voice, bunching her muscles and straining toward the opening. She turned, fisting her hands at her sides. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears. Fight or flight adrenaline took over. I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Dr. Baton. Are you family? He stood waiting in blue scrubs, this woman might be unstable look on his face. She expelled her breath in a rush, reaching a hand toward the bed to steady herself. Only a doctor. Hannah's doctor, not Connecticut, the dangerous underground organization who wanted Lillian as their lab rat. Not family, a friend. Over the past 2 years, she'd become accustomed to lying and wearing a disguise. She ran a hand over the straight, long blonde wig made from real human hair she'd paid a whopping sum for at a specialty shop. She scanned the doctor's body, connecting their energy fields, checking to see if she could use his energy to heal Hannah. Insubstantial. She swallowed the bitter taste in her mouth. It wasn't the doctor's fault he had no more energy than anyone else she'd come in contact with today. How's our patient faring? He flashed a brief smile and moved into the room without waiting for an answer. He strode to Hannah, studying her charts and the machine monitoring her vitals. I have medical experience, Lillian said. I've seen worse than Hannah. She's going to beat this, she added for Hannah's benefit. Well, we're certainly doing everything we can for her. Can I speak to you for a moment? He gestured to her father. Let's step out into the hall. I'd like Zoe to come with me. Her dad used her alias. Okay, the doctor nodded. Lillian and her dad followed Dr. Baton into a small room with an examination table and a couple of chairs. He closed the door and turned to her dad, his expression serious. We're going to need to intubate your daughter to help her breathe. Her lungs are full of fluid, which makes it a struggle to take in oxygen. Her body can't focus on healing. Intubation? Her father questioned. He means they'll put her on a ventilator, Lillian said. The ventilator will breathe for her. About 1 in 3 patients never recover. That's exactly right, the doctor spoke. Your daughter needs time to fight the infection in her system. Is this like life support? Will she get better? Her father asked. That's our goal. The doctor sounded chipper. Despite his optimism, Lillian knew there were no guarantees, especially for someone with extrasensory abilities. Hannah, a strong empath, held the grief, anxiety, and feelings of others in her heart and lungs. She's dying. A wave of nausea flooded Lillian's system. She made a beeline for the nearest chair, which happened to be next to her dad, and sat. Can we stay with her? Her dad asked, leaning a hand against Lillian's chair. Not while we intubate. You can wait in the family room. We'll come get you in a few minutes. Lillian nodded. They would put a tube down Hannah's throat, a harsh procedure for her dad to witness. Are you okay? Her dad asked after the doctor left the room. His curly dark hair carried a few more streaks of gray since she'd last seen him, and the lines around his mouth looked deeper. You're not getting sick now, too, are you? Lillian took a slow breath. No, I'll be fine. I'm tired, not sick. She shrugged, careful to keep her tone light. She'll be okay. Let's head to the waiting room. Not 30 minutes later, a nurse who introduced herself as Danny came to fetch them, and they returned to Hannah's bedside. The clear plastic accordion tube snaked into Hannah's mouth, feeding air and oxygen into her lungs. A large machine next to her bed beeped as it monitored her heart, respiratory rate, and blood pressure. She's a trooper, Danny said, but the procedure's worn her out. She's been given a mild sedative to help her relax, and she's sleeping. Might be a good time for you to grab a bite and get some rest. I've got the evening shift. I'll be sure to keep an eye on her. Lillian couldn't think of eating or sleeping, but a deep breath revealed her father's vitality was low. Too low. Neither one of them had eaten lunch, and he'd been at the hospital since yesterday. He needed a break from his worry and constant vigilance. Let me take you home. You're exhausted and need to rest. Her father took off his glasses and wiped them on his shirt. You're right. I'm beat. Are you sure you're okay? Yes. She attempted a smile, but knew it was weak. She wasn't okay. She hadn't been okay for years now. She drove her father's Cadillac. The glow of the headlights dimmed through the dank gray fog. The damp weather seemed to infiltrate her body, blurring her thoughts until they all led to the same desperate conclusion. If she didn't heal Hannah tonight, her sister would die. She parked the car in the driveway and turned to her father, his head lolled against the seat. Dad, wake up. Her father startled and opened his eyes, his dazed look gradually clearing. I'm sorry, I must have drifted off. She peered around as far as she could see through the mist. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but she could never be too careful. Although it had been 2 years since she'd left, Connecticut could still be watching. It's okay, Dad. Looks like the coast is clear. Come on. She shivered as she zipped her jacket and grabbed her purse. Her mother had warned that unless Connecticut believed Lillian was dead, they would never stop searching for her. If they were watching the house, they'd find Lillian and kill her dad if he got in the way. She got out of the car and stayed alert to any sudden movement, but when nothing disturbed the silence, she let out the breath she held and followed her dad through the side door and into the kitchen. She sniffed the air, swallowing a pang. It smells like coffee and waffles in here, two of my favorite smells. It's good to have you home, Lillian, even if it has to be under such terrible circumstances. Are you hungry? A little. The pang intensified into a physical ache when she spied the painted white cabinets and bright yellow flowered wallpaper she and Hannah had helped their mom pick out when they were little girls. She swiped at the sudden moisture in her eyes. Not much had changed over the years. You sit, she pointed to a chair at the small kitchen table. I'll whip us up a late lunch. Her father did as she asked. She'd never been much of a cook, but she made grilled cheese sandwiches and heated soup from a can she found in the cupboard, then cleaned up the dishes. Thanks, sweetheart. A little crispy, but it hit the spot. Her father was being kind. She was so preoccupied worrying about Hannah and Connecticut, she burned the dang sandwiches. He wiped his lips with a napkin, pushed his chair from the table, and stood with a small smile. I see some things never change. Pressure built behind her eyelids. How she'd missed her dad's familiar teasing. I'm going to bed for a little while. He wrapped her in a hug, the familiar smell of coffee and Old Spice aftershave enveloping her. You should too. You're safe here and you need to rest. I can't stay, Dad. You know that. If Connecticut has any idea I'm still alive, this is the first place they'll look for me. It's not worth the risk. I'll stay at the hospital. Hannah needs me. I have to keep trying to heal her. Her father touched her arm, fear and concern reflected in his dark brown eyes. I'm worried about you, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. Somehow you've managed to stay safe these past couple of years without us. It's nearly killed me. His voice cracked. Be careful, Lulu. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you. Hey, I've survived this long, haven't I? Lillian kept her voice light. Don't worry, Dad. Nothing's going to happen, I promise. Lillian hugged her father and swallowed past the hard lump in her throat. She tightened her hand around the keys to his car. Get some rest. I'll call you if anything changes. Her dad nodded, then turned and shuffled to his bedroom while she forced her shaky legs to move toward the kitchen table where she'd left her purse. She couldn't remain here and risk her dad's safety. That was true 2 years ago. It was still true today. And despite the ache in her heart for home and the people who loved her, it would still be true tomorrow. She parted the curtains and peeked out the kitchen window. Thunderclouds lined the March sky, the fog blanketing her dad's scar. She tugged on her lower lip. If Connecticut were watching the house, the fog provided cover. But would Connecticut still be searching for her after all this time? As far as she knew, they believed her dead, and they wouldn't come after Hannah since she hadn't inherited the healing gene. And Connecticut either didn't know or didn't care about her sister's other talent. If Lillian stayed hidden, she and her family would be safe. She opened the garage door. Nothing moved, not even a tree branch. The silence seemed to lie in wait like a big cat ready to pounce. She hunched into her jacket and hurried to the car, careful to lock the doors as soon as she was safe inside. She grabbed the wheel with both hands to stop them from trembling. What if I'm wrong? What if Connecticut knows I'm still alive and is waiting for me at the hospital?